Sometimes how you come across somebody once in a while you shouldn't have messed with. That's me.
I am not an African American.
You're an Oreo cookie, white in the inside and black on the outside.
I don't have an afro, I have an Amerifro.
Talking that idiotic stuff you talk about, I will slap you.
Go ahead, make my day.
Black as the ace of spades, but 100% American.
Heard around the world by everybody and their mama. The Jesse Lee Peterson Radio Show.
Uniting the races with truth instead of dividing them with lies. We're also rebuilding the family by rebuilding the man. I am Jesse Lee Peterson, taking your phone calls at 888-775-3773, 888-77-JESSE, Facebook.com/Jesse Lee Peterson. Put in number 1 after Peterson, click like, and keep up what's going on. The Bible Go-To Guy, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Jesse.
You're talking about Daniel and the lion-hearted. And the reason you talk about courage because we've been talking about how many Christians are so afraid, and people are afraid to tell the truth, and they lack courage.
They sure do.
Okay, let me give them an example of that brought this whole thing on. Here's Reverend Franklin Graham, number 4 there, Andre, soundbite B. He was on, I believe it was MSNBC. Yes, it was. Yeah, MSNBC interviewed him. And they asked if Obama was a Christian. And Franklin Graham could not and would not say, even though you can see that he believed Obama is not a Christian, he would not say that Obama is not a Christian.
Do you believe that President Obama is a Christian?
Well, I think you have to ask President Obama. You can ask me, do I believe you're a Christian? I think the best thing for a person is to ask you directly. So I think people have to ask Barack Obama. He's come out saying that he's a Christian. So I think the question is, what is a Christian?
So you don't take him at his word when he says, I'm a Christian?
No, of course I do. I was saying, you have to ask every person, but he has said he's a Christian, so I just have to assume, that he is.
So therefore, by your definition, he's not a Christian.
Again, you have to ask him. I cannot answer that question for anybody. All I know is that I'm a sinner and that God has forgiven me of my sins because I put my faith and trust in Jesus Christ. That's all I know.
Do you believe that Rick Santorum is Christian?
Oh, I think so.
So how do you know? If the standard is only the person knows what's within him, when you apply it to the president, why is it different for Rick Santorum?
Well, because his values are so clear on moral issues, no question about it. And I just appreciate the moral stand that he takes on these things.
Wow. Yes, Rick Santorum is a Christian, yes, his moral issues, but he cannot say that Barack Obama is a Christian, and which says that he doesn't believe Obama is a Christian and based on his moral stance in life. Why couldn't he just say, no, Obama is not a Christian? Yeah. But this guy, Reverend Franklin Graham, is afraid of being called racist. That's why he could not say, we all know that Obama is not a Christian, but because Obama is black, the Reverend is afraid to say that he's not a Christian. He had no problem with Rick Santorum. Yeah, oh yeah, he's a Christian. That
was a clever reporter.
Yeah, and then he said, oh, this other guy's a Mormon. No, he's not a Christian. He said, Newt is a Christian. So how come he can easily say it about the white guys, but has fear in saying it about black people, including Barack Obama? Obama is not a Christian. And so this is why you want to talk about courage in the Bible. Daniel and the lions hearted.
You can pick any man of God in the Bible and come up with an example of courage, no doubt. Daniel is just one of my favorite. He was a scholar. He was a young man way long time ago, 600 years before Christ was born. Daniel was on the earth. That's a long time ago. And still he's revered today as an amazing man because of his courage and connection with God. He stood up to his own king. This Franklin Graham won't stand up to his king, but Daniel stood up to his king. And it's funny how we'll tell the truth about everybody that we think don't have the power to hurt us. But somebody who has the power to hurt us, all of a sudden our courage leaves us. So he perceives, this Franklin Graham, that Barack Obama or people who like Barack Obama have the power to hurt him. So he won't say anything. He won't say anything negative about the president.
You know, he wears the name Reverend. How is it possible to say that you represent God, been called by him, and you have the fear of anybody? I mean, and black people, no one except for me will tell the truth about them. And so they've been left out in the cold. And Barack Obama is a wicked man. He's not a man of God. He's a deceiver. And Franklin Graham has a standard in America. He people listen to him, and he won't tell the truth about the son of Satan. That's mind-blowing to me.
He won't tell the truth about the son of Satan.
Yes.
Wow.
Obama is the son of Satan. He represents evil.
He does. There's no doubt about that.
There's nothing in Obama's action over the last 3 years that implies, nothing, not one thing, that indicates that he is a Christian. You know, he said that Obama said that he was a Christian. He asked Obama, how did you become a Christian, something like that. I don't have it exact. He said that Obama said that he was working in the community. He was a community organizer. And some of the people that he was working with were going to church. And so they asked him to go to church with them. So he went to church and joined Jeremiah Wright's church, and that's how he became a Christian. There was no confession of believing in God and all that kind of stuff. He just went to a church and joined, and that's how he became a Christian. What a liar. But anyway, go ahead about Daniel, because of time here.
Well, Daniel was taken captive. Daniel actually was a Jew. He was a learned man, just like Paul the Apostle. So the first big test for Daniel came when, after he had interpreted a king's dream. Oh, by the way, Daniel was also an interpreter of dreams. An interpreter, he could tell you what you dreamed and interpret it, because him and his brave friends prayed to the Lord, and they interpreted a dream that the king said to all the magicians and soothsayers. He said, I have a dream that's troubling me, a vision that comes to me in my head.
Could Daniel tell you the dream before you told?
Before you
said to him, I had a dream?
That's the magic of it.
He could tell you that you had a dream and what the dream was?
All the magicians, all the Harry Potter magicians of the day, they told the king, they said, this is an impossible thing to ask of us. We can't tell you what you dreamed. We can interpret it for you. In other words, we can tell a lot. But the king was much smarter than that. He's not king because he was a dope. Daniel and his friends prayed so that the dream and the interpretation could be made known to them. And sure enough, that's what happened. Daniel was asleep. Vision came, showed him the dream and the interpretation of it. Daniel woke the next day, went to the king, said, don't kill all these. He should have just said, yeah, you can go ahead and wipe out all these other fake magicians.
But he asked not to kill them?
But he said, yeah, don't kill them. They have some use. So he gave the king the dream, let him know what the dream was, and then the interpretation. And the king bowed down before Daniel and said, your God is God. Your God is God of gods, God of kings.
And so
Daniel that set Daniel up. That set Daniel up to be the number one man under the king, the number one advisor, and his friends. And they all became governors of the province of Babylon. Fast forward, the Chaldeans, people who interpret things and they're into magics, fortune telling and all that stuff that they do, they didn't like the fact that Daniel and his friends were doing so well. And so they set up the king to make a silly law that says for 30 days, people need to worship me alone, not need to worship any other god. If they do, they will be thrown into a den of lions.
They made the king do this?
Yes.
They set up these laws for the king?
Yes. They came and played up to the king's vanity because he was vain.
So these people said to the king,
make this crazy law that says you are only to be worshipped for the next 30 days.
And who were the people that decided to do this?
The magicians that Daniel made look bad by interpreting the dream.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay.
Okay, so they didn't like that.
Sound like Barack Obama.
Yeah, they were his...
And Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid.
You got a smart guy who comes in like Ryan Paul and says, well, listen, here's how we can straighten out the budget. And they all hate him.
Right.
They have no answers themselves except more debt, but they hate the man who has the answers.
And so this wise and smart king said, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Like I said, he had vanity issues. We're going to find that out later.
Okay, go ahead.
So, yeah, he bought that and not thinking ahead. And so Daniel, immediately when he heard that law, he went and did what he normally does. He prayed to his God, and the people who made that law, who helped the king pass that law, went and found Daniel. This law was made so they could catch Daniel in the act. They caught him in the act of praying to the true God. They brought him before the king and said, this man has disobeyed you, Darius.
What a setup.
You need to do like your law says, and the law cannot be changed. So he had no choice. He loved Daniel, but he had no choice. So much for the law, huh?
And so they threw Daniel.
They threw him into the den, and an angel of the Lord was there with Daniel, stopped up the mouths of the lions, and kept them from attacking Daniel.
So he threw him in, and the next morning the king went to say hi.
Yes. The king went to see if he was alive or dead, because the king said, this is up to you now. It's out of my hands. It's in your hands of your God if he can save you or not.
He threw him in the lion's den.
Now, this is interesting. He makes a law saying he has to be thrown in the lion's den. Well, Daniel was thrown in the lion's den. No harm came to him. So the king immediately took the men who made the law and threw them and their wives and kids, goats, whatever, threw them all into the den, and the lions destroyed them, killed them all.
Really?
Yes. So Daniel, with courage, knowing that he was going to be caught, he did it anyway. That's what the scripture says. Knowing that the law was in place, he went and prayed anyway.
Right. Amazing.
And God was able to save him. Now, his friends ran into a similar trouble. They made a law later on, says, okay, we made this god of gold, and we put it in the middle of the city. At the sound of music, all the different musical instruments playing, everybody has to bow down to this. Well, these three friends of Daniel, I don't know where Daniel was at the time, but his friends were. And they wouldn't bow down to this god. And so they were taken before the king.
Amazing. 888-775-3773. I hope that Reverend Franklin Graham is listening now. This is some good stuff, man. Back in a moment, folks. Bob, we're going to guy in the few minutes we have left here. We have about 2 minutes or so.
They were brought before the king, and the king said, oh, come on, fellas. You're my favorites here. I don't have to kill you. Just tell me to my face that you will worship this great God that I have set up, and I'll let it slide. You know, I won't do anything. Oh, well, the king said to them, if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? So these men then answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, if he will not save us, let it be known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Yikes, that's throwing gasoline into the fire. That made the king very angry. So he said, make that furnace 7 times hotter than it needs to be. And he had his men of war bind these men up in their clothes, and they were thrown into the furnace. The furnace was so hot, it killed the men. The men dropped them into the furnace.
It killed the men who threw their men?
Yeah. It was so hot, it killed them, and apparently that means they dropped them into the furnace, right, as the scripture tries to relate to us. And the king is like, hey, didn't we throw 3 men into the furnace? He's asking his counselors who are standing near him, how is it that we see a 4th man in there? And they're all walking around in the fire, and the fire is not harming them. So he went over to the furnace and like, are you guys all right?
And they got out?
They came out without any smell of the fire or the flame on them. And the king said, your God is God. But that came about because of the courage of these men.
Yeah, we need that type of courage now to show
whether
that
or not
there is
God
a God
saves us, we will not obey you, king.
Wow, thank you, man. A great story of courage. I appreciate that. Tomorrow is Open Line Friday, and waystograve.com will be here as well. Have a good day, folks.
This has been the Jesse Lee Peterson Radio Show, produced by Bond Action. To access the full version of this show, visit us on the web at bondaction.org.